Corporal Nate Harrow stood outside his small field tent, staring into the dark forest. The fire crackled softly beside him. The sky above was filled with heavy purple clouds, glowing faintly as the planet's twin moons tried to shine through. Virilia was not an easy world. The air was thick. The storms came without warning, and strange noises came from the forest at night. Most of the survey team stayed close to base, but Nate liked being out here. He said it helped him think. Truth was, he didn't enjoy being around too many people. Tonight, though, he wasn't alone. He heard it first. A soft sound, like something dragging across the ground. His hand moved to his sidearm. Another noise followed. A low growl, weak and shaky from somewhere near the trees. Then he saw her. She stood on two legs, but she wasn't human. Her body was lean, covered in smooth scales with patterns like a tiger's. Her eyes glowed faintly in the firelight, golden, sharp, and watchful. She looked like something between a big cat and a reptile, tall and proud even though she was clearly hurt. Blood ran down her left arm and her breathing was ragged. Nate didn't move. She didn't either. They stood in silence, watching each other. Finally, Nate spoke. "You're hurt." She didn't respond. Maybe she didn't understand. He took a slow step forward and pointed to her arm. "That injury, you need help." Her ears twitched. Her tail flicked. Another growl came from the sky. This time, not from her. Thunder. The storm was coming. Nate looked at the sky, then back at the alien. "You can't stay out here. You'll die." She bared her teeth, but didn't move when Nate backed away slowly toward his tent. He left the flap open and sat by the fire again, letting her choose. The first drops of acid rain hit the trees with a hiss. She entered his tent. Not fast, not afraid. Like a queen entering a shelter she didn't trust. Her eyes stayed on him the whole time. Nate didn't follow. He simply pulled on his hood and sat under the rain tarp by the fire, letting her have the tent to herself. Inside, the alien rested, listening to the rain burn the leaves outside. She was tired, so tired, and her side throbbed. She didn't understand the human's words, but his actions were clear. He had offered shelter and walked away. That was strange. Her kind, the Larothi, didn't believe in trusting outsiders. Most of them saw humans as loud, fast-spreading creatures who talked too much and respected too little. But this one, he had said nothing more. Had not tried to touch her. Had not even stepped inside his own tent again. She watched him through the small window as he sat by the fire, humming something softly, not caring that the acid storm hissed against the tarp above his head. She fell asleep. The next morning was quiet. The storm had passed, leaving blackened leaves and steaming earth. Nate stretched and made coffee. He noticed the flap of the tent still closed and didn't try to open it. A moment later, it opened. She stepped out slowly, her wound cleaned and wrapped with her own cloth. She carried herself differently now. Less pain, more pride, but her eyes stayed alert. Nate raised his hand slightly. "Morning." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she walked past him. Into the forest. No goodbye. No sign. Just gone. Nate didn't chase. He just sipped his coffee and sighed. "Take care out there," he said quietly. 2 hours later, when the team arrived to check on him, Nate was already packing up. His tent looked untouched except for one thing. A curved, silver-bladed knife left carefully by his sleeping bag. Back at camp, the others laughed when Nate told them what happened. "You let a wild Larothi into your tent?" his partner Lena said with wide eyes. "You're crazy." "She was injured. I didn't let her. She just came in. You're lucky she didn't bite your head off." Nate shrugged. She didn't seem like the type. The science officer, Doran, looked thoughtful. "You say she left you a weapon?" "Yeah." "Interesting. Larothi only leave blades for family, or fallen warriors." "Well," Nate said, scratching the back of his neck, I'm not dead, so maybe she was just saying thanks. Lena raised an eyebrow. Or claiming you. Nate laughed. Don't be ridiculous. But none of them saw the tall shape watching from the trees beyond the camp perimeter that night. Golden eyes. Tail flicking slowly. She had slept in his tent. Once. She remembered the warmth, the silence, the peace. Now she would watch and make sure no one got too close. The jungle was alive with sound. Wind moved through the thick leaves like whispers. Birds called out warnings, and something big was moving through the trees. Corporal Nate Harrow adjusted his visor and scanned the shadows. He was leading a 3-person team collecting data from the wild zones outside the main colony base. Nothing unusual had shown up yet, but the silence was too heavy. It felt wrong. Something's off, said Lena, the scout walking beside Nate. It's too quiet. Nate nodded. Stay alert. They pushed through thick vines toward the next beacon post. It was a small tower meant to track weather changes and animal activity, but when they arrived, the tower was on the ground, crushed. What did this? Whispered Doran, the science officer. Before Nate could answer, a loud snarl echoed through the trees. Then came the growls. Dozens of glowing red eyes appeared in the darkness. Back. Form up, Nate shouted, pulling his weapon. The others raised theirs too. Out of the shadows came large creatures, 6-legged beasts with thick hides and long claws. They looked like giant wolves made of stone and bone. The first one leapt. Nate fired, hitting it in the side. It stumbled, but more followed. The air was filled with snarls, roars, and the hiss of plasma shots. They were surrounded. Nate fought hard, keeping his team close, but there were too many. One of the creatures knocked Doran down. Another slammed into Lena. Nate turned toward them, but one of the beasts lunged at him, jaws open wide. Then a blur of movement, something faster, fiercer, shot out of the trees, the creature attacking. Nate flew sideways with a yelp. A new figure stood in front of him, crouched low, tail whipping the air. It was her, Kasari, the alien from his tent. She let out a roar so loud it echoed through the forest. The creatures stopped. Her golden eyes flashed with fire. Her claws shimmered with metal. She wore armor now, light but strong, dark like the night. She moved like a storm. One beast charged her. She ducked, rolled, and slashed. Another came from behind. She jumped over it and landed on its back, driving her blade deep into its neck. The creatures, sensing something more powerful than them, turned and ran. Silence returned. Kasari stood still, breathing hard. Nate lowered his weapon. You saved us. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked slowly toward him. Lena stood up, limping. Is that your alien? She's not mine, Nate said quickly. Kasari growled low when Lena stepped closer to Nate. Lena froze. Okay, I'll stay back. Nate held out his hand gently. It's all right, they're friends. Kasari didn't move. Her eyes locked on Lena, watching her every breath. Doran whispered, She's guarding you. Nate frowned. No, she's just... But then he remembered. The tent, the night, the storm, and the knife. Something had changed after that night. Kasari finally stepped back and looked around. She checked the fallen creatures, made sure they were dead. Then she turned, gave Nate one last look, and walked into the forest. Wait, Nate called softly. She paused. Thank you. She didn't reply. But this time she didn't disappear completely. Nate saw her in the trees, watching from a distance. Back at base, word spread fast. The alien saved Harrow's team. She took down 3 beasts by herself. She growled at Lena when she got too close. It became a joke around the outpost. Careful, someone would say. Get too close to Nate and the jungle princess will find you. But Nate didn't laugh. Not because he was angry, because he didn't know how to feel. He remembered her eyes. She hadn't just been fighting. She had been protecting him. Every day after that, she appeared again, sometimes just a shadow in the trees, other times close enough that the others could see her clearly. But she never let anyone near Nate without watching closely. Once, when a supply drone landed near Nate's tent, she walked straight up to it and let out a low growl. The drone beeped and flew away in panic. Kasari sat near his tent that night, silent. She didn't try to enter again, she just sat, tail curled around her, eyes glowing in the firelight. "Why are you doing this?" Nate asked. She tilted her head. Then slowly she pulled something from a pouch at her side. It was the same curved knife she had left him. She held it out to him. Nate didn't take it. "I already have it," he said, pointing to the one on his bedroll. She nodded slowly and left it with him again. Doran, ever the scientist, finally said what no one wanted to admit. "I've been studying Larothi behavior," he told Nate over lunch. "They have a bonding instinct. When they sleep near someone during life-threatening storms, they see that person as part of their circle, sometimes more." "More?" Nate asked. "They protect that person, sometimes for life." Nate nearly dropped his fork. "You're telling me she sees me as part of her tribe or pack or chosen one? The Larothi don't make the difference like humans do. It's all about who kept you safe when the sky was falling." Nate leaned back, rubbing his forehead. "I didn't even do much, I just gave her space. That was enough." Later that week, Kasari appeared again, this time at a council meeting between human and Larothi diplomats. It was meant to be peaceful, but tensions were high. When one Larothi war chief approached Nate to greet him, Kasari stepped forward and blocked the way. She growled, deep and loud. Everyone went quiet. The chief looked surprised, then amused. "She guards you?" he asked Nate through a translator. "I guess so." The chief nodded slowly. "She must have chosen." Nate looked at Kasari. Her face was calm. Her tail was still, but her eyes were ready. If anyone got too close, she would act, not with hate, but with fierce loyalty. The sun rose slowly over Varelia's wild forests, painting the sky orange and gold. The human base stood quietly on the edge of the green zone, its towers blinking in the soft light. Inside, Corporal Nate Harrow sat in the command tent, reviewing reports, but his mind wasn't on his work. It had been 2 weeks since Kasari saved his team in the jungle. 2 weeks since she started showing up near the base, never saying a word, but always watching. People had gotten used to her now. Sort of. Some still joked. Some were nervous. But no one got too close to Nate anymore. Not after the council meeting, when she blocked the war chief with a growl that made even the guards freeze. Nate sighed and leaned back in his chair. "This is getting strange," he muttered. A quiet voice spoke from behind. "She follows you again." Nate turned. Doran stood there holding a data pad. "Yeah," Nate replied. "I noticed." Doran looked thoughtful. "You know, this isn't normal even for the Larothi." Nate raised an eyebrow. "You said they bond after storms." "They do. But this feels deeper. Protective, yes, but also personal." "What do you mean?" "I mean she watches how you move, how you act. Like she's learning you." Nate shook his head. "I don't know what to do. I didn't ask for this." "You gave her something she never had before, Nate. Shelter, peace, maybe, even trust." Nate stared at the tent flap. "I didn't even talk to her. Sometimes silence is the strongest language." Later that day, Kasari appeared again. She didn't sneak or hide like before. She walked right through the forest gate, tail swaying, shoulders tall, golden eyes calm. The guards didn't raise their weapons. She wasn't here to fight. She was looking for Nate. She found him in the engineering yard, helping with a broken supply drone. When she walked up, every other tech stepped away quietly. Nate turned and blinked. "Kasari." She said nothing. Instead, she dropped something at his feet. It was a thick, scaly pelt, freshly skinned, from a forest beast twice her size. "A gift?" Nate asked. She nodded once. "Why?" She pointed at the drone, then at him, then at the camp. Understanding came slowly. "You want to help? Protect this place?" She nodded again. Over the next few days, Kasari began working with the scouts. She never said much, but her eyes missed nothing. She taught them how to spot danger in the trees, how to smell wind changes before a storm, how to walk without snapping a single branch. She was fast, smart, strong, and calm, but still, if anyone stepped too close to Nate, especially new visitors, she'd be there, silent, watchful. A low rumble in her throat. At first, it made people nervous. Then it made them feel safe. Nothing gets past her, Lena said one day. It's like having a bodyguard from another world. Or a jealous jungle cat, one of the mechanics joked. Nate didn't laugh. He just looked at Kasari, who stood near the fire pit, watching the stars. Something had changed. And he felt it too. One evening, a small group of Larothi elders came to visit. They met with the human leaders to speak of peace and shared knowledge. Nate was asked to attend as a bridge between the two sides. Kasari stood at the edge of the room. Not part of the talks, but not far away either. One elder, a wise-looking male with silver lines on his scales, watched her closely. He turned to Nate and spoke through the translator. She bonds strong. Nate nodded. She saved my life. Yeah. Elder's golden eyes narrowed slightly. She chose more than that. Nate said nothing. Another elder leaned forward. Do you understand what you gave her? I offered shelter. You gave trust, space, peace. Nate nodded again. And I didn't ask for anything back. That is why it matters, the elder said. After the meeting, Nate found Kasari standing outside the command tent, staring at the forest. He stepped beside her. I didn't mean to change your life, he said softly. She looked at him. You did not force. I know. She took a slow breath. In Storm, I felt small, alone. Nate looked at her, surprised. Her words were slow but clear. You gave warmth. No questions, no fear, just tent. He smiled gently. It wasn't much. To my kind, she said. It was everything. They stood in silence. Then the ground shook. The alarm blared through the base. Seismic activity detected. A voice shouted, Everyone, brace for impact. From the watchtower, a scout yelled, Movement underground, it's big. Nate and Kasari rushed to the main gate. Dust rose in the distance as something huge burst from the forest floor. It was a creature unlike anything they had seen. A massive burrower with stone-like armor and glowing red eyes. It screamed, shaking the trees, and charged toward the base. Panic spread. Guns fired. The beast kept coming. Kasari pulled her blade. Nate grabbed his rifle. They looked at each other once, then ran forward, together. The battle was fierce. The creature slammed into the outer wall, breaking steel like paper. Teams fired from towers, but the beast's armor was thick. Kasari leapt onto its back, slicing at weak spots. Nate gave cover fire, drawing its attention when it turned toward the base. It roared and swatted him aside. He hit the ground hard. Nate! Kasari cried out, using his name for the first time. She dropped down and stood over him, roaring with fury. The beast hesitated. She raised both blades, her body glowing faintly from a strange blue light, some Larothi energy field. Then she struck. One blow, deep into the creature's eye. It screamed and fell. Dust settled. Silence returned. Nate coughed, sitting up slowly. Remind me not to make you angry. Kasari stared at him, worry in her eyes. You hurt? Just bruised. You? She stood tall, still, standing. A slow cheer rose from the walls. The team shouted. The base was safe, and everyone saw her now, not just as a strange alien, but as a protector. That night, by the fire, Kasari sat beside Nate, not watching from a distance, but close. The others smiled quietly, leaving them in peace. Kasari looked at the stars and then at Nate. You mind to guard, she said. Nate smiled softly. And maybe I'll guard you too. The base was quiet after the attack. The creature that had come from underground was defeated, but the damage was clear. Trees were broken, fences bent, and several supply drones were smashed. People worked hard to fix what they could, but the tension in the air was thick. Nate sat beside the fire pit, rubbing his sore shoulder where the beast had knocked him down. Kesari was close by, her sharp eyes scanning the darkness around them. Her presence was a comfort, and a warning to anyone thinking of causing trouble. "You should rest," Nate said softly. She shook her head. "No. Watch." He smiled. "Good guard." Her tail flicked once, slow and sure. Then she shifted, looking at him carefully. "You hurt, saving me." Nate frowned. "It wasn't your fault." She growled low, more like a rumble. "I protect you." And protect him she did. The next days passed in a strange rhythm. Nate and Kesari trained together, learning each other's ways. She taught him how to move silently in the forest, how to listen to the wind, and how to watch the shadows for danger. He showed her how to use human tools, rifles, and tech. She was quick to learn, her golden eyes sharp and focused. But during the quiet moments, she stayed close, near enough to touch, yet distant. One evening, a message came from command. Nate was to leave Veralia for reassignment. The news hit him like a punch. He didn't want to go. Not now. Not with everything so fragile. Kesari was nearby when he received the message. Her eyes darkened. She didn't say a word. But when Nate told the team, a strange silence fell. That night, Kesari paced near Nate's tent. The firelight flickered on her scales. Nate sat outside looking at the stars. She stepped closer, tail brushing his arm. He looked at her. "I have to go. Orders." She growled, deep, low, warning. Nate sighed. "I wish I didn't have to." She moved forward and sat by his side, close. The first time she had slept in his tent was during the storm. Now she was refusing to leave his side at all. The next morning, Nate packed his gear slowly. Kesari watched, her body tense. Lena came over, trying to lighten the mood. "You know, if she growls at anyone who tries to touch you, we're never getting close again." Nate laughed softly. "She's serious about it." Lena smiled. "Well, good. Someone has to keep you safe." The day Nate was to leave, the camp gathered to say goodbye. Kesari stayed at the edge of the crowd, eyes fixed on Nate. No one dared approach. When Nate hugged Lena and Doran, she growled softly, stepping forward, her presence powerful. The Larathi elder from the council spoke quietly. "She is not just a guard, she is a bond, and bonds are not broken easily." Nate looked at Kesari. She met his gaze. Then she did something unexpected. She spoke. Her voice was rough but clear. "I come with you." Everyone turned. Nate stared. Kesari stepped forward, standing tall. "I guard you. I stay," the commanders whispered among themselves. One shook his head. "This is unusual." Kesari ignored them. "I am Larathi, but you are my pack. I choose." Nate didn't know what to say. The council called an emergency meeting. Leaders debated whether an alien warrior should join the human expedition. Kesari waited outside the tent, patient but alert. Nate sat quietly, knowing she was risking everything. Finally, the leader of the council spoke. "We accept her, on one condition." "What condition?" Nate asked. "She must learn our ways. She must act as a bridge between your people and ours." Kesari nodded once. Nate smiled, feeling relief and pride. Together they were stronger. That night, as the camp quieted, Nate and Kesari sat near the fire again. She looked up at the stars. "You saved me," she said simply. "You saved us." Nate replied. She growled softly, a sound that now felt like a promise. "No one hurts what is mine." Nate nodded. "No one." The morning sun spilled golden light across the camp as the preparations for departure began. Human and Larathi teams worked side by side, packing supplies and checking equipment for the next mission beyond Veralia. The mood was tense, but hopeful. "Corporal," Nate Harrow stood near the transport ship watching the busy crew. His thoughts were elsewhere, on Kasari. Since the council had agreed to let her join the human expedition, she had become a constant presence at his side. The growls and warning looks remained when others came too close, but now those who knew her understood. She was his protector, his friend, and something more. Nate adjusted his pack and glanced toward the tree line where Kasari waited. Her golden eyes caught his, fierce and steady. She did not say much, but her quiet strength spoke volumes. As the team gathered, the human commander approached Nate. "You ready, Harrow?" he asked, voice low. Nate nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." The commander's eyes flicked to Kasari. "The council is watching closely. This partnership is important." Nate gave a small smile. "We'll make it work." The boarding call echoed through the camp. Nate and Kasari walked together toward the ship. Her steps were light but sure. Her tail flicked behind her like a banner. Once on board, Nate settled into his seat, glancing at Kasari beside him. She did not sit but stood, alert and watchful near the door. The ship's engines roared to life. They lifted off Virelia's surface, soaring into the deep black of space. Days passed in the ship's quiet hum. Nate and Kasari spent much time together, learning and understanding more about each other's worlds. One evening, Nate found her staring out a window at the stars. "Do you miss your home?" he asked softly. She looked at him, eyes reflecting distant memories. "Home is where Pack is. Now, you are Pack." Nate smiled, touched by her words. "Thank you," she said, voice low but clear. "For what?" "For choosing me. For trust." Their journey took them to a new planet, a place of mystery and danger. Scouts reported strange signals and signs of unknown life forms. The mission was clear: explore, learn, and ensure safety for both humans and their new Lirothi allies. Nate and Kasari led a small team into the dense forests. The air was thick with unfamiliar scents. Strange sounds echoed through the trees. Suddenly, alarms blared. A massive creature charged at them from the underbrush. Its body was covered in thick scales and glowing veins, eyes burning bright. The team scattered. Nate raised his rifle. Kasari growled fiercely and leapt forward. Together they fought the beast. Nate's shots distracted it, while Kasari's swift strikes found weak spots. The creature roared in pain and fled into the darkness. After the fight, the team regrouped. "You two work well together," Lena said with a smile. Nate nodded. "She's a great partner." Kasari glanced at him, a faint smile touching her lips. Back at camp, the human and Lirothi leaders met to discuss the mission's success. Kasari spoke for the first time in front of the council. "I am Lirothi," she said firmly, "but also Yenner protector, guard, bridge." She looked at Nate. "He saved me. I guard him. Now, I choose to stay, to learn, to help." The council was silent. Then the leader nodded. "Your choice is brave. Your bond is strong." Nate felt a new respect for Kasari, not just as a warrior but as a friend and partner. Their bond was a symbol, proof that two very different species could trust and protect each other. One quiet night, Nate and Kasari sat outside the campfire. She turned to him. "If danger comes," she said, "I growl. I fight." He smiled. "And I'll be right beside you." She reached out, her hand brushing his arm. A rare gesture. "I am yours," she said softly. "And I'm yours," Nate replied. The mission continued, with many challenges ahead. But, no matter what dangers they faced, one thing was clear. Together they were unstoppable, and if anyone got too close to Nate, they'd have to face the growl first.